Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Big Mountain Dev and Data session with Drew Gillies. You're in room 2, and after this short introduction that I give, Drew is going to present what I learned from doing Kaggle courses with my pregnant wife. If you have questions during the presentation, please go ahead and use either Slido there just to the right of this presentation to type in your question, or go ahead and put them out in room 2 in our Slack channel, and we will get those answered for you during the session. Drew is coming to us today from Taylorsville, and he works for IMET Solutions, making medical records more easily searchable. And a little piece of trivia tidbit that he gave me as we were getting set up is that he is a triplet, and both he and his brother are left-handed. That puts him in a very unique and awesome category. And with that introduction, we're going to turn the time over to Drew. We're excited to hear from you. Thank you again for your support of the community and your preparation to teach us today. Thank you, Drew.
All right. So, hey guys, like he said, my name is Drew. I'm going to be talking about what I've learned doing Kaggle courses with my pregnant wife. Before that, let me clicked on the wrong screen, my bad. Okay, about me. I write a lot of Python code for a healthcare company. I like to skateboard. I haven't been skateboarding a lot lately. I'm going to be a first-time dad in November. So that's really exciting and scary at the same time. And yeah, that's also why I was able to do Kaggle courses with a pregnant wife. I have been spending a lot more time indoors with COVID going on and my wife being in an at-risk group. So I've been watching a lot of Wes Anderson movies. I think there's just one left that I have to watch. I just like him as a director. I feel like his movies are just really visually appealing and quite funny to watch. I like to make YouTube videos about computer hardware and like gaming and that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty thoroughly geeky. So if you can sense that about me, good job. I might be a little more geeky than the average person. That's hence why I might be interested in Kaggle courses. Kaggle is a website where you can go and play with data science. It's owned by Google, I believe, and there's like a lot of available data sets you can go to start playing with. And there's also experts that go there as well as amateurs and noobs. I happen to be part of the amateurs and noobs that go there to kind of learn things. And let's check out Kaggle. So, boop. Come on, bud. There we go. So this is Kaggle, their website. It's being quite slow. There we go. So like over here on the left, you've got tabs. You can go to competitions that they hold. You can go see data sets that people have published. You can learn from notebooks that people have made publicly available. When it talks about notebooks, it's usually a Jupyter notebook written in Python or R. And Jupyter notebooks are just like an interactive computing device. So it's kind of like having more of an interactive Python script, but you can put like blocks of code as well as blocks of markdown to describe what you're doing with your code in more verbose fashion. You can go to the discussion pages. There's courses, and those are the things that I focused on with my wife. And then there's a job section and all types of other stuff. You can see what you've looked at recently. It's got like a news feed kind of thing where you can learn about what it thinks you would be interested in. So like you can see these politic tweets are usually kind of fun. They'll usually make like word clouds of what politicians have written about. And you can see like, I saw somebody do a debate of all this kind of stuff, but this looks like it's more of a data set then. And so there are notebooks attached. You can go click on notebooks and see those and like get started on working on something. So just to look at it, you click on it, and then you can see his comment. This is a code block, and then this is the output of it. You can see what version it is. So it's kind of got a version history. You've got input, you've got log, you've got execution. And if you create an output, the output would be there. To get started coding with it, you just click copy and edit. And it's going to start a cloud-hosted Jupyter notebook that you can start working on. So as soon as this loads, and you can come over here, you can see that I've got the internet turned on, so I can do pip installs with whatever I need to. You can turn on a GPU accelerator or a TPU accelerator. And you can see that I've got it in Python. You can choose R if you want, but I prefer Python. So yeah. But yeah, it usually starts, you've got your CPU, which is, I think they proportion just like one CPU or 1 or 2 cores. They give you 16 gigs of RAM, and you can run your notebook for 9 hours before it times out. And it's like, all right, you're trying too much stuff. So it's kind of a fun way to get some data exploration going and to try like a proof of concept for machine learning models if they're simple. Like if it's really complicated, you might want to try to train it like on GCP or AWS or something. But if it's going to run in less than 9 hours, you can run it in a notebook. So to start it, you can just like hit Shift Enter on a thing, and then you can read in your data. This is going to create a data frame, and it's going to be Trump timeline, and it's reading in a file called trumptimeline.json. And then you can run here, you can do head. If you want to add something, that'll print out your nice little data frame, and it's going to say the text of the tweet, entries, hashtags. It's going to have a lot of data. If you wanted to add like a markdown thing, you click on markdown, and you've got, this should be markdown. So you can be like, hey, I'm big text, explaining stuff. And look, you got a little text block within your code, and it's kind of like nicer with than just commenting in code, because you can put like math formulas up in this. And then we're going to also explore the courses page, because this is also like what my wife and I worked on. So once you complete a course, you can like view your certificate. They'll give you a nice little certificate saying that you did something. It also has like a progress bar. If you go in here, Python's the first course that they want you to learn, because it's kind of crucial to machine learning and data science. And you've got a tutorial section, and then you get an exercise, which is a notebook that you get to do. Like they'll just start a notebook for you where you can practice what you just learned in the tutorial section. And let me close that. Boop. And yeah, things are being real slow to load on my computer today, but yeah, it'll give you a little certificate. You can share it to LinkedIn or something. People will be like proud of you, or they should if they're your friends, you know. And if not, then you can impress them other ways. And so yeah, those are the courses. And let's go back to the slides. Yeah, so that's Kaggle in a nutshell. Just a quick introduction to it for those that are unfamiliar. Learning new things is something that I'm pretty passionate about. I learned to code when I realized that I was probably going to get laid off from a pharmaceutical gig that I was working, and I just did web development. I thought I was going to do like front-end design, and I did that through freecodecamp.org. It's like a community of people who learn how to code, and there was just really important, like really helpful forums there, and like really helpful lessons and projects that one could build. It kind of helped me learn how to code. So I started coding in JavaScript and HTML and making like nice websites. And I listened to a lot of audiobooks, podcasts, video courses for stuff that I'm unfamiliar with. And I realized that I was really interested in big data when I had listened to like my 5th like big data book in a year, and it was like Data and Goliath or something, and it like made me think about how much power there is in all of the data that's so freely available online. So I figured that I should probably start playing with data science and machine learning just to see if it's somewhere where I want to take my career. And I think it is. It's definitely a fun thing, but it is kind of harder to learn than web development was. At least for me it is. There's a lot more math concepts and statistical theories that you don't necessarily need to understand, but it helps you more fully understand what's going on if you can follow that kind of stuff. So the first time I encountered Kaggle, I started and I was like, you know what, Drew, you're going to learn how to do machine learning. And I talked to myself, I says, you're doing that machine learning, Drew. And so I get on the Kaggles and I'm start Kaggling. And I did the intro to machine learning micro course after work. And then that's kind of where it ended. I didn't feel like I learned too much. I just kind of went through the tutorial and then went to the exercise and like figured out, rocked how to code all the stuff that I needed to. And then I kind of just was like, yeah, I don't know if that whole machine learning thing's for me. So I took like a 9-month hiatus and kind of just forgot about Kaggle and pursued different projects that I was interested in. And then one night I realized that I, I realized I wasn't spending my time as wisely as I could have, especially my post-work time. And I realized that I was able to learn to code through Free Code Camp because of the meetups that I went to, and I felt accountable to the people I met there. So like I'd go to a study group meetup on Tuesdays, and we'd all like talk about what we were working on and present projects to people, and people would be able to help me out. And that was just really helpful. So like I felt like I had to work on web development throughout the week in order to come to those study groups with questions that people could help me out with. And so I thought, you know, Drew, you're going to need one of those support groups. You're going to need one of those things. And I thought, who better than my pregnant wife who's already stuck with me because we're kind of like staying away from coronavirus together. If I make her do Kaggle with me, then I bet we could win. And my wife is not nearly as geeky as I am, but I figured she was qualified because she had just finished an intro to programming course using Python. And I'd read some like I'd read some article on Medium or something that's like, to get started with machine learning, you only need basic Python programming. And I was like, my wife can do basic Python programming, so she'll be a great co-pilot and she'll help me learn a lot. And she's pregnant, so we've kind of staying away from people, and so we don't stay away from each other. So I figured that there'd be no lag if I didn't have to jump on a Zoom meeting. And if I Kaggle with her, then she might think, oh man, my husband's so smart. You know, I thought I could win some of those like coveted husband points. And I don't really know if I did, but you know, we could ask her someday. But yeah, I figured I like if I chose my wife, I wouldn't want to look like super stupid and lazy in front of her. And so I'd be more motivated to learn like what I stated that I wanted to learn. And so that brings me to this point of commitment devices. In behavioral economics, commitment devices are used to align our stated goals with our actual actions. So an example of a commitment device is like buying an engagement ring for a woman or for a man, whoever, you know, whoever you want to buy them for. It kind of shows them that like, I'm willing to spend a lot of money in this and I'm like very serious and I'm probably not going to go do stupid stuff. They work because a lot of humans, me included, are loss averse. Like to me, losing $50 is like more painful than it is the idea of me winning $50. So yeah, loss aversions definitely come into commitment devices. And social support. They can help, you can stick to a goal if people have like social pressure around it. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like hard pressure, but like just expectations that you're going to do what you've said you're going to do. And then examples of a commitment device. I heard a podcast where this guy was like, he really hated Oprah and he wanted to lose like 25 pounds in 6 months. And so he said, if I don't lose the 25 pounds in 6 months, I'm going to donate $100 to Oprah. And he was really motivated to lose the 25 pounds because he didn't want to encourage Oprah or something. He had some like serious Oprah issues. And so that brings me to my second shot at Kaggle. I'd walked through my commitment device. I was like, my wife's going to be there. I have to show up. So we started with micro courses. My wife had a lot of questions. I had some questions, and the courses we've completed so far are Pandas, Intro to Machine Learning, Intermediate Machine Learning, and I think we also completed the Intro to Game and AI stuff. So that's basically just where you do like reinforcement learning, or like you create an agent that plays a game, such as like an agent that plays Connect 4 is the example that they walk you through in that course. Currently, we're involved in a soccer simulation that is a soccer game, and it basically is like FIFA, but you submit an agent that that sees the game board and then reacts based on what's going on with it. And yeah, and you see if you can like win, and it's like your agent versus other agents, and they climb a leaderboard to see who can create the best soccer playing bot. And it's kind of fun. It's actually really fun. It feels like the most engaging competition that I've been in so far. So now I'm going to walk you over some of the topics that we struggled learning. Data science is kind of difficult, and so there's a lot of topics that we struggled with. One of those is one-hot encoding. And there's just like one-hot encoding, the idea behind it is you take a categorical variable, and a categorical variable is like a string. And if you've got like a data frame like this, you've got your colors that are white, red, black, purple, and gold. If you were to pass it into a machine learning model, it's kind of difficult for it to understand. So you just like make it simpler. So you basically expand every variable into its own column, and you give it a 1 or a 0, which is basically true or false if it has that color. And so one of the issues we ran into is we were doing the micro course with machine learning. I think it was the intermediate one. And basically the training and test data that we had, in the training data, there were different categories. There were like different colors present in the data. And then in the validation data, there were different verbs there, like different words there. And so the column numbers didn't match up, and our model was like, what the heck, man? I thought you had my back. And so you have to pre-process your data before you send it through to your model. And the solution to that was using a data pipeline. Further into the Kaggle course, it goes over that. So if you're ever struggling with a topic, just kind of read forward a few things into the course, and it usually will cover it. Like we spend a good amount of time struggling with a topic, Googling things, and then like if we just would have scrolled down to the next paragraph, it kind of explains how to solve that problem, or at least how many people solve that problem. Other topics we struggled with: Tensorflow. Tensorflow is a machine learning library, and it's maintained by Google. There are a lot of helpful things there, but it's like kind of overwhelming because there's so many different things there. Docker was an interesting thing to use. I've used Docker for work, like to use web apps and stuff to push up and pull down and basically make sure that you've got the same code that you're running on your servers so that you can like mess with it locally and then push it up. But this one we were using to machine model, like we were training a machine learning model, and it's basically a reinforcement learning agent that plays soccer against a hard bot, and it kind of just learns at the end of the game if it won, and if it won, how much did it win by, and that would give it a positive reward. So if it won by like 6 points, the positive reward would be like 6. If it lost by 7 points, the negative reward would be -7. And so it basically just goes through, plays all this game, and then tries to figure out like a strategy that is going to win the most amount of games. And I first tried to run this locally, and then I tried to run it on GCP. And GCP is like Google's AWS, or it's Google's Azure, if you're familiar with that. It's like Google Cloud Platform. They host a bunch of virtual machines, and you can push code up and it'll execute there rather than on your device. And so that way you can get a distributed network of like compute nodes working on a problem. So when I tried to run this locally, it's looking for an NVIDIA supported GPU with CUDA. And so basically that's like the 10 series, 20 series, and 30 series of NVIDIA GPUs. I have like a 16 series NVIDIA GPU, and so that wasn't supported. And so basically I had to go into the Docker run command in a bash script where it was starting it. And I had to comment out the GPU's all command, and then that allowed me to run that locally. And then, man, we still have more problems with stuff that we struggled with. I got 99 problems, but one hot encoding isn't one anymore. So another thing that we struggled with were training that Dockerized container on Google Cloud Platform, because I've always just worked with that with local hardware. And so I'd never worked with Google Cloud Platform or AWS. And you have to think about provisioning virtual machines, bucket administration. That's kind of like database administration kind of thing, but it's like really dumbed down database administration. And then there's an AI hub you got to worry about. There were just a lot of pieces to figuring out the GCP. So I'm going to show you Google Cloud Platform.
Drew, do you have a second to take a question?
Oh yeah, ask all the questions you need.
Okay, Fitz has asked, do you feel there's a minimum time per week to spend on Kaggle to keep up the momentum and not lose knowledge?
I don't know. I am not an expert by any means. I'm kind of still an amateur, but I like to spend probably like 3 to 5 hours a week on it, if not more. I think you could probably, if you're in a place where you've learned a lot, you could probably get by with like an hour, but like I have no data to back that up. That's all just intuition and guessing. I think as long as you're working towards something, like you kind of build the reward up to it, and then yeah, it like kind of becomes an obsession. Like with this soccer tournament, I feel like climbing the leaderboard is enough of a motivation to get me to keep doing it. But like, obviously there's time constraints. Like when my child comes, I'm gonna have more time constraints. But yeah, I don't know. I'd say probably like an hour to 3 is probably good to keep your skills sharp, but I don't know.
Okay, awesome. So there is a little bit of time you need to spend on a consistent basis in order to really keep up on what's going there and to keep your knowledge fresh.
Yeah, and it's a good place to go to anyway, just because there's always people posting interesting things. Like I read about like a rainbow reinforcement learning model, which takes like dueling DQNs and like a lot of different topics, and it kind of like hybridized all of them and outperformed a lot of other things that people had been using to train reinforcement models. I don't know. It's just an interesting place to hang out.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah. And so here's Google Cloud, and this is the GCP I was talking about. Basically, you log into it and you go to your console, and it's going to show you a bunch of stuff. Like in their menu, they've got a lot of different options of what you can do with Google Platform. 1 second, I'll take a drink. Let me plug my laptop in. That might make things work faster. If I can find the cord. There we go. Okay, so you've got marketplace, billing, like just a bunch of options. You can come over here, you can make a compute, like you can start up a virtual machine with like however many cores and GPUs that you want. And I thought that's where I had to go, but with the Docker the Docker container I was using actually uses the AI platform. So you can come over here to the dashboard, and you can see the buckets that I've got. Those are like storage places. And you can have notebooks hosted. You can train models here. You can make predictions. You can deploy your model here so that basically people can ping an API and it will talk to your model, that kind of stuff. We can come in here and we can see I finally got my reinforcement learning model up here. And you can see how many machine learning units I've consumed. You can look what you've provided input and output to the training. You can look at logs. You can come down here and see how much CPU everything's using. So like the master process is using around 20% CPU consistently. And then you've got all your workers down here. I think there's 24 workers for this. And then you can see their individual memory utilization. It's kind of like fun to geek out on and be like, wow, if I had to buy a computer like this, it would cost me so much money. But being able to do it in the cloud is nice. They give you $300 in Google Cloud credits when you sign up. And then part of Kaggle, I was doing a competition with the football thing and when I say football, I mean soccer. It's a soccer competition. They gave me $2,000 worth of GCP credits. So I'm kind of just doing this model training with the $2,000 worth of credit that they gave me on top of the 300 that you get for signing up for GCP. You can see the master GPU utilization and how much memory it uses. Like if you're curious how much GPU memory, I think it's got 16 gigs of memory and it uses like 95% of it because each worker submits matrix stuff to it so that it does all that calculation. And then we're going to come over here to the logs. And you can see logs for your machine learning models that you're training. Most of the time for Kaggle, you don't have to do this. This was just something that I dove into the weeds for because I want to win the competition. So I thought if I could train my model with a lot of hardware, then I might have a better chance of winning, or at least coming in the top like 10% of people, whatever. And so you can come here, you can look at the output of all of your logs. And so you can see that this actor has done like almost 2.4 million steps. A game of soccer in the simulation is 3,000 steps. There's going to be, ultimately, I'm going to have this model do 500 million steps before it returns everything. And then that basically just is based on the papers that I read, that should be really good. You can see the parameters that you pass it, like how much discounting there is, entropy cost, a lambda function, and the learning rate. And the learning rate's kind of just like how fast your reinforcement model learns. It can be that with this, it learns really slow. So like it might still have a good strategy even if it loses because it might have just encountered a better opponent and it might need to just tweak its strategy ever so slightly every time it plays. So it's not going to like throw out the kitchen sink and try to recreate strategies that are new every time with a learning rate that low. So yeah, GCP was kind of a big, interesting headache because I had to install a lot of things to work with, and I just found it easier to work with like Ubuntu rather than Windows. I normally run Windows. So we had to read a lot of documentation doing Kaggle, just because there's a lot of machine learning libraries that we were unfamiliar with. And then also just like simple questions, like we had to seed this model with predicting housing prices so that it would always predict the same amount with, so we could see if it gets like closer with like a subset of the data instead of like doing all of it. And so that, to make sure that it would always do the same subset, we seeded the random number generator. And my wife's like, why do we have to seed it? And I was like, so that it goes over the same stuff. And so she's like, so it's like not really random. And I'm like, not really. And then we had to read stuff about that on Wikipedia. We read a lot about sklearn. Sklearn is also a machine learning library. And like, there's a lot of different pieces. Like you can go into the sklearn.tree and that's all of the tree decision makers. And then they've got ensembles, which are like multiple different things. And these, reading this, like basically just helped us to understand what we could, what parameters we could tweak in order to make our model predict better. So you come over here, you've got this documentation. You can see like what the default parameters are and like what things you can pass in, what like keyword arguments it takes. And, you know, you just play with these and try to figure out if you can make your model predict better based on what like parameter tweaking. This decision tree is kind of like a linear regression type of way. And then the random forest is like a bunch of decision trees. So it makes a forest of decision trees, and then it kind of like follows the path that would predict based on all of those. Yeah, like the micro course goes into more detail into that, but like those were interesting things to read about and to actually dive into the documentation. I definitely didn't dive into it by myself, but all the questions my wife asked me, she's way more curious than I am. Like in my head, I'm like, oh, this is just a black box. I just interact with it like this. But she's like, I want to know how it works. And so that ultimately led to me reading into the documentation and having to explain what was going on more in depth to her. And that helped me learn better what's going on with Kaggle stuff. I guess we could ask ourselves, why should anybody try to do Kaggle? I think it's a great learning environment. People have been really helpful there. I've posted to the discussion boards and people will respond within like a day or two to questions that I ask, and they're usually pretty helpful. The competitions are really fun, and there's like really decent prizes for them. Like some things you can win up to like $20,000 if you come in first place. I mean, I like to dream. A man can dream and think that he can do that, or a woman can dream. Some people can dream and think that they're going to win that. And you just learn new things. So it's like an interesting place to go, and you can follow people and see. Most people, if they win a competition, they'll post the notebook with how they won the competition, and you can look through their code and be like, wow, that's something I didn't think about. Or unless you won it, and then you're like, I thought about that. Everybody should think how cool I am. Some cool experiences that I've had with Kaggle so far. I was supposed to insert leaderboard pictures, but I can actually show you guys the leaderboards. Sorry about that. So with Kaggle, you can do interesting things. So if we come over here, go to my profile, you can go to the competitions and see that in some competitions I'm doing pretty well, like the soccer competition. Like climbing up against that is really fun. Seeing that you're in like the top 4% kind of motivates you to try to stay on the top. And then there's other things where I'm not so good. But it's really fun because you get to see like where you go with discussion boards, and I mean, not leaderboards, not discussion boards. The discussion boards are also here. I just got mixed up. But like the leaderboards, you can come in here, you can see that my best model is got me into 30th with a score of this one. And then you can like go through your submissions and see how many actually are close to that 1,000 points. And there's only another one that's close to it. And you kind of get an idea of what's working well. Like I like the feedback that you get with the competition, just because it's like so clear what's working and what's not. And that's kind of fun. Other cool experiences I've had where I got that $2,000 worth of Google Cloud credit. And it does expire pretty quickly, so I'm kind of motivated to use it on this competition that I'm working on. And then people are really fast to respond to the discussion posts. Like if I ask a question, usually I get a couple of responses that are very helpful. And all of the micro courses are really free, so they're really helpful. And there's a lot of discussion around what's going on behind each of the topics. And yeah, Kaggle's just been really fun for me. It's helped me engage more with like programming as a hobby. And yeah, I feel like it helps to be doing it. I know that it can be difficult learning new things. So if anybody needs to have like a Kaggle partner, we could reach out to me and we can schedule some time and do like a Google Hangouts or something and go over machine learning concepts. We can play Kaggle together. If you want to join a competition together, we can try to do that. Teamwork makes the dream work. That was a company that made Shrek. I forgot to take out that joke. I was going to say that verbally, but not actually print it, but I printed it. Sorry, guys. How to contact me. I'm on LinkedIn as Drew Gillies. On Kaggle, you can find me as dmoneyballer. On YouTube, you can find me as dmoneyballa. And on GitHub, you can find me as dmoneyballer. Yeah, so I'll just open it up for questions if people have questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to post those either in Slido or over on the Slack channel, and we'll pick those up there and I can feed them to Drew. Drew, what's your next big, while we're waiting for questions to come in, what's your next big project that you're hoping to do after the soccer, football, depending on what part of the world you live in, I guess? What's your next one that you're hoping to do?
I don't know. There's a competition called Ride. And it's like it's basically just like trying to see if you can predict if a student's going to answer a question correctly or not. So that's probably what I'll be working on. Just like I'll come over here to the compete and look at, like, if I was into the NFL, I'd do this NFL competition, but I'm not, like, I can't get behind NFL stuff. Like, I watch Super Bowl each year, but I'll do probably this competition just because, like, the prizes, like, if I won 50 grand doing this, I'd be real happy. I'd like rip my blouse. But even just competing and learning things is kind of intrinsic value enough. But I feel like just going after like fun, big prizes where you can kind of like dream and kind of Don Quixote your way is fun, at least for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah.
You got a shout out from Fitz. He says that's a fantastic survey of Kaggle. He says I signed up a while ago, but this was good motivation to get into it. So
Yeah, thanks, Fitz.
I think you're creating some converts there to get into Kaggle and to get some data and get working on it.
Yeah.
It looks like you answered all the questions in your presentation. In fact, the one other question that did come up, you did answer before I got a chance to say it. So that was brilliant. A little bit telepathic there.
That's lucky. Sometimes you get lucky.
You got well, not lucky. I think that's skill. Brian Belknap also says, he said, I tried Kaggle some time ago, but was quickly overwhelmed and kind of dropped it. But this might be the motivation he needs to get back in and look at some of the Kaggle.
Yeah, I would say start with the courses. The courses kind of like, they hold your hand through it. So like you can walk through, and even with like these courses, there's like discussion boards that you can look at and understand what people are doing. So like this one, you can see this and then like go to a discussion piece on like this kernel. Like it's way more hand-holdy to do the courses, and it actually helps a lot. So yeah, that
Awesome.
kind of stuff. If my web pages would load faster, it'd be cooler, but it's real slow. But yeah,
it's competing with the stream, right?
Yeah, and I'm recording locally too, so like I might have too high of a bit rate on my local record.
Awesome, Drew. We got one more question that came in through Slido. This is from Keegan. Is Kaggle totally free? Sorry, I missed the first few minutes of the presentation.
Yeah, it's free. I haven't spent any money on Kaggle. I mean, you can like hook in, you can upgrade your notebooks on Kaggle, but I just use the free notebooks because I don't feel like I need to use really super intense stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, well, thank you, Drew. Appreciate your time today. Thank you for your preparation, and thank you for the support of our community, putting this together to help each of us kind of raise the bar, do a little better, and do something new. Appreciate your time today. That was awesome. And we look forward to hearing from you again in the future.
Well, guys, thank you.